morning, Mr. Pai.
Good morning.
Welcome to a BW Dialogue. First of all, a very happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to everybody.
When you look at 2021, what are your expectations from 2021?
Well, I've got a high expectation from 2021 because 2020 was the perfect storm. We had COVID. The whole world went into lockdown. We have not seen such an event for the last 100 years because even during the Spanish flu 100 years ago, the world was not in the lockdown and a larger part of the world was impacted than 100 years ago. And this was devastating. And the world responded by having the largest economic stimulus in world history with about $12 trillion being pumped into the economy all over the world. And I think it'll go up to $15 trillion because President-elect Joe Biden is coming with another $1.9 trillion. This surge of liquidity has protected industry. Economies globally will see a decline of maybe 4.5% for the entire calendar year. And now we had the political disruption in the US, civil rights, everything else. A president going, a president losing, a new president coming, and a lot of activity. And all around the world, there was devastation. And China somehow managed to come out of it and has done well in the last one quarter. Now, as far as India is concerned, the first quarter of this financial year, 2021, was bad because we were under lockdown. Economy came down by 23.5%. Second quarter, economy went up. It grew by 22%, but compared to the previous, it's down by 7.5%. In the third quarter, I think the economy will be maybe growing at 1-2% compared to the same quarter last year. And this quarter, January, February, March, I think we'll be up maybe 4 to 5%. Now, based on the latest estimate, government says that the economy in real terms will be down 7.5%, and in nominal terms, with inflation about 4%. That's very good news. We have seen government revenues come up in the last quarter, and this quarter will be a bumper revenue for the government. So things are looking very good. We have come out of lockdown, and I must say, Anurag, that India has done very well in the lockdown. Our death rate per million is only 127, half of what the world is, half of the world average. And we are the second largest country in the world. Of course, we can't talk about China because we don't have data. They hide things. But if you look at the United States, 24 million people with COVID, nearly 400,000 people dead. The United States is 1/4 the population of India. It is 24 million. It means nearly 100 million people got infected. Compared to India, right? You take the same population figures, it's 4 times. And 400,000 will be 1.6 million dead. Whereas India has just got about maybe 160,000 dead and about 10.5 million people impacted. And yesterday was the lowest number for 7 months. So India has done very well. We had a 20 lakh stimulus, out of which maybe 2.5-3 lakhs was spending by the government, and the balance for liquidity measures, including a 3 lakh crore guaranteed loans for MSMEs, 2 lakh crore to farmers, etc. And while many of us were looking for stimulus for the middle class who did not get any kind of good stimulus, it did help that the poorer classes, the bottom 60%, were taken care of by Prime Minister Modi. And during this time, we had an enormous amount of reforms, opening up of the economy, the PLI scheme for industry, opening up of defense. Of course, the Farm Act was liberalized, giving farmers the option. Some of the farmers from Punjab are on, sitting down in Dharna because they're protesting. I think honestly they're misled because, Anurag, if you look at the Punjab economy, Punjab was the second richest state in the country in terms of per capita income 13 years ago. Now it is the 13th. It has come down. And why is that? Because Punjab has not made the transition from the agricultural economy to an industry come services economy, and the economy is going down. It is a big disaster for Punjab. Punjab has to change, but people are resisting because they get guaranteed purchases by the government at good rates, and I think it will hurt Punjab anymore. So we have seen a lot of activity happen. And if you look at 2021, I think we should be optimistic. In 2021, the GDP will come down from 203 lakh crores. That is 2 crore, 3 lakh crore. It's a lot of money, okay? It's $2.93 trillion to about 193 lakh crores. So it's coming down, but it's expected to go up by about 11-12% this year. 2021, we go up to about 221 lakh crore. So there'll be a growth. And this year, government borrowing will be 7.5% of GDP plus 4.5% by states, that is 12%. And next year, hopefully, if they borrow the same levels, I think the fiscal deficit will come down from 7.5% to possibly 5.5%, 6%. And revenues will be up. Next year, revenues will be very good. So I think we're looking forward to a very good budget. And if you look at industry, many parts of the industry are doing well. Agriculture sector has done well. The Kharif crop this year was a record. Rabi will be a record. So agriculture production for the whole year will be an all-time record because we had 2 good years of monsoon. Initial estimates the monsoon next year is good. So we could see another record growth with 3.5–4% growth in agriculture, which is very, very good. If you look across industry, the real estate industry has come back because they were down for 2-3 quarters. They come back because of the Bombay reduction in rates in Karnataka, reduction in rates possibly in Noida. And I think this quarter they'll do very well, primarily because interest rates have come down. I'll talk about that. Steel industry is doing very well. The metal industry is doing very well. The IT service industry is booming. They're growing in double digits. For a company having 475,000 people to grow in double digits is something unique. It's very, very difficult, but they're doing it. That's good news. And we're also seeing the banking industry come back. We are past the NPA problem. Many people keep talking about the NPA, etc. The overall NPA in the banking system is just 4.5% net. Yes, gross is 15%. They already provided. And they're providing 1.5–2% a year. So we are past the whole hump. Even though RBI says it may go up, I don't believe it will go up because all the banks are saying that they're not seeing so much of stress. So this year, the financial service industry will do well, including NBFCs. Some of the NBFCs had very good results. The auto industry has done well. I think December, November were record sales. January, February, March will be record sales. Of course, the growth will be much higher because last year, in 2020, January, February, March was a bad quarter, primarily because of the shift to Bharat 6 for all the vehicles. But this year will be good. And the one big improvement has happened is RBI's handling of the economy. We must compliment RBI. And RBI's handling has led to short-term interest rates. India has suffered for a long time from high interest rates. Anurag, you'll be very surprised that before this year, the average interest in the government debt was 7.2%. And that's very, very high. And the interest servicing, paying interest took away 25% of the central government's revenues. That's why India has a poor rating, not because of debt, because of the high interest costs. Now, RBI this year flooded the market with 8 lakh crore of liquidity. So short-term interest rates have come down. The repo, I think, is 3.5% or so. And with the repo so low, short-term you can borrow. And that's why GSEC 10-year rates have come to 5.8, 5.9 from 6.7, 6.8 1 year ago. That's good news. I hope RBI keeps the liquidity the short end so that interest rates come down. And that means bank lending rates have come down by 100 basis points in an average. Housing loans have come down to 6.75, 6.9%, an all-time low. And that's leading to a lot of people buying houses because the EMI comes down. And that has led to very good boost for the economy for this year. So I think we can look forward to this economy economy with optimism. The stock markets have done well. The indices are at an all-time high. And people keep asking, oh, the economy is just coming back. Why is it because stock market doing well? They don't understand how markets work. The markets are an amalgam of fear and greed and the emotions of thousands and millions of people, right? 23rd March, I think, last year, the markets fell 25–30%. It fell one of the largest falls ever in all markets. And that is because as soon as lockdown was announced, the markets fell. Markets didn't fall when the impact of the economic decline was seen at 23.5%, maybe 3–4 months later. Now the market is discounting the future and the market is saying the future growth is going to be very good. Next year is going to be very good. So the markets are all-time high. SEBI has done a wonderful job, so regulators like SEBI and RBI have done a great job. We must compliment them through Business World and write about them and tell them they've done a great job. SEBI has liberalized, allowed many companies to do right issues, public issues. Public issues are doing well. More and more people are raising capital. So I think we must raise capital. And I think later I will talk about my expectation of the budget and how the budget should be. So overall, the good news is, Anurag, we are past the decline. We are past what has happened. We are looking to this year with optimism. And I think there's great scope for optimism.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pai. You outlined what happened in 2020, what the government did, what the RBI did. and most importantly, how Indian entrepreneurs benefiting from this environment, and also they showed their resilience and they were able to come up. Now, we are 10 days away from the budget. It's on everyone's mind. The finance minister has also promised a budget like never before. So she has raised the expectations. Tell us, what are your expectations from the budget and what do you expect to see in the budget?
Well, Anurag, first of all, I want to lay out the scenario. I think the decade of 2030 will be India's decade. We will grow to $5 trillion by 2026. There's the 85% probability. We'll grow to $10 trillion by 2031. There's a 75% probability. All right? And we see it happening because Indian industry is becoming very competitive. You look at the second quarter numbers and look at this quarter numbers, they become very competitive. They're scaling up, they're investing, and I think they're doing very well all across India. They're understanding what to do and they're exporting also. So now, to make this India's decade, the budget must focus on the challenges that India's economy faces. What are the biggest challenge? The biggest challenge to my mind is, Anurag, that 42% of India's population depends on agriculture, which is 15% of GDP, growing at 3.5%. The per capita income of people in agriculture, that is 42% of population, is 56,000 rupees. Per capita income of people who depend on industry, about 25% of people, is about 1,65,000. This is the last year's figures. And in services, the balance, I think 33% is 2,25,000. The ratio is 1:3:4. So agriculture does not pay. They got too many people. So what should we do? We must create labor-intensive industries. We must make sure that we invest in the smaller towns. India has 7,000 small towns. So that people can go from the village to smaller towns. We can put labor-intensive industries there and then make sure that they get jobs. And if they get 10,000-12,000 rupees a month, they'll be happy because the costs are very low in smaller towns. Not in cities like Mumbai, Delhi, and Bangalore, where you can't live on that kind of money. And that's why you see people living on the streets, right? And that's the main reason, because the jobs don't pay well. So we got to do that. Third, we got to build very good infrastructure. For infrastructure, the biggest challenge is supply chain. India's supply chain cost before GST was about 14% of GDP. Now I think it's come to 12% of GDP. It should come down to 78%. When the roads are all built, maybe, and the railways go at 45-50 kilometers an hour, it'll come down to maybe 10% of GDP. Then we must bring it down to 7 to 8% to become competitive. You'll be very surprised. If you manufacture in Delhi and sell in Mumbai, it's much more expensive than importing from Shanghai because the supply chain costs are very, very high. And in most industries, you live on thin margins. Yes, and that I think is very high. So you must build infrastructure. And then COVID has shown that you must invest in people. You must build human capital. Primary education, school education, bridging the digital divide, college education, and then we must also build R&D. We need R&D for industries and for education, and that's why the new education policy is important. We have spoken about it, and people's health. We must make sure that people are healthy. And lastly, we must incentivize investment, and we must help people feel good. The feel-good spirit should come back. And we must make sure that all that is done without too much of borrowing. Because if you do all these things today and lay the path, the next decade we can see rapid growth. Remember, China is now $15.5 trillion. They started in 1978. We opened up in 1991. China has grown nearly 10% a year for 30 years continuously. We have grown 8.5% a year from 275 billion to 2.93 trillion from 1991 till 2020 March at 8.5% in this country. So we can also grow. So that budget should do all this. So what should be the focus? Well, the first large focus should be investment and infrastructure. Why is that? There are two things that increase economic growth: consumption and investment. India invests 30% of GDP. Consumption is about 70%, or of which 10% of GDP comes from the government, right? But how will people consume more if you don't create more jobs? And jobs are created when you invest in infrastructure, when you make capital expenditure. So because when you make capital expenditure, you build roads, you build ports, you build airports, you build the railway lines, etc. So you buy steel, you buy cement, you create jobs. So government has to invest more. I think this year government is investing about nearly 4 lakh crores on infrastructure. Next year, they must maybe increase it by 60-70%. So the focus should be on more infrastructure and much better. Government has announced a 105 lakh crore infrastructure plan last year, and I think they must fund that plan so that it takes off. I just heard that Nitin Gadkari has made sure that roads are being built at 78 kilometers an hour in the first week of January, which is extraordinarily high. So I think all the revenue is set, because once you government spends, and infrastructure has to be with public money, because for the private sector, they can't raise long-term money. It's very difficult. They fall sick. And when they fall sick, it goes back to the banks and everything goes down. So I think new methods have come last year, and I think that's very good. The focus should be on infrastructure. The second focus should be, very, very importantly, increasing consumption. To increase consumption, we must create jobs. And to create jobs, we must have industries. And to incentivize industries, we must invest in the urban sector. See, there's no point investing more and more money in smaller villages because they're not viable. They're not viable. Invest in the 7,000 small towns all across the country. If you have a small town of 50,000, 1 lakh people, put in roads, give them good power, create flathead factory, create labor incentive for labor-intensive industries to come. That's what China did. Because China's biggest asset when they opened up was labor. And they created SEZ near the coast, whole districts, to make sure they create labor. And then we must create labor-intensive to export. No country has grown without focusing on exports. Look at Germany after Second World War, Japan after Second World War, Southeast Asia Second World War, and then you see Taiwan, then you see Korea, then you see China in the last 30 years. They have to be export-oriented. Even the United States at the beginning of the 20th century was the largest exporter. So you have to create incentive for export, and export can happen in labor-intensive industries because our labor costs are low, and Bangladesh has done a great job by focusing on garments, etc. So for that, we need lower-cost labor, and lower-cost labor is available in villages in the north of the country. If you look at this country, there's more labor coming out of farming in the north of the country than the south. Karnataka's per capita income is 2,50,000 rupees. Bihar is 49,000 rupees. UP is 69,000 rupees. All right, 69,000. So Karnataka labor is very expensive. UP labor is cheaper. And Bihar, UP, West Bengal, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, they got huge population. So create the labor-intensive industries, possibly declare 250 districts of this country which are poor, which have got a lot of labor, as tax-free zones for creating labor-intensive industries. Once you put the infrastructure, once you get the incentives, then they will come and they will export. Make sure that we create exports, right? Next thing we need is, we have to create export incentive for export. India should become a large exporter of agriculture commodities. We are the second largest producer of wheat, second largest producer of rice, largest producer of milk, largest producer of sugar, largest producer of cotton, largest producer of spices. Why can't we be the largest exporter in the world? For that, we must create port infrastructure. We are getting the railway infrastructure, the port infrastructure for exports. There must be storage in the ports, etc. This year, you'll be happy, Anurag. India is going to export 10 million tons of rice. 10 million tons of rice. Of course, wheat is not competitive, but wheat prices are going up. Hopefully, in the next 2-3 months, there's a shortage around the world. Wheat prices go up. Our soybean exports is booming. Our sugar exports will be 6 to 7 million tons. Our spice export is going. We're not exporting milk and milk products for various reasons. We must do that. So we must create a structure for agricultural exports. And the downstream impact of agriculture and exports will be increased agriculture production and better income for the farmers. So income will come. So infrastructure, we'll have the urbanization for smaller towns, and we'll have this. And infrastructure includes roads, ports, etc. And then the government should then make sure that you create incentives for higher education. Today, only 26.5% of people young people in the age group 18 to 23 go to college. You must rise to 50%, because even if they don't get jobs, when you go to college, you are among your peers, you create a worldview, you get some kind of education, even the education is bad. No, a bad college education is better than no college education. So that's what Amartya Sen said for school education. So we got to do that. And as per new education policy, create a fund for research, a 5,000 crore fund for research. I think that's very important, because we have to create intellectual property. You'll be surprised, Anurag, we are a global software power, but we create only 500 computer science PhDs a year, which is pathetic. I was part of the Kelkar committee, Anil Kakurkar committee for reforms in IIT, and we suggested India should have 100 institutions like the IIT, 25 IITs, 25 NITs, then 25 IIITs, ICSR, etc. And each one taking a minimum of 1,000 students a year. So if we graduate 100,000 high-quality engineers, we can conquer the world. 100,000 high-quality engineers, we can do that, right? And I think we're doing that all. That's why IT is doing very well. That's why we have to invest at the top of the pyramid in education. Then health. Now, Modi's, Prime Minister Modi's insurance program, Ayushman Bharat, has done extremely well. Extremely well. 1.5 crore Indians have benefited, right? So Indians are getting access to tertiary health, and the death rate will come down because people will live longer and people will be more healthy. And poverty will come down because 40% of people who fall into poverty fall because of paying for health, right? So we must increase the program and we must provide money for everybody to get a COVID vaccination. COVID vaccination, 2 shots cost you 400 rupees. So if you have, let us say 100 crore people to get it this year, that means there'll be 40,000 crores. Don't levy taxes, do that, right? And that I think is extremely important. And then what should you do for taxes? Corporate sector has got a good tax rate, 25%. Keep it as it is, don't fiddle with it, do well. Now, individuals, they got a raw deal. They're not got anything. So their individuals, I suggest up to 5 lakhs, no tax, 5 to 10 lakh, 10%, 10 to 15 lakhs, 20%, above 15 lakhs, 30%. That will clean up the system, incentivize wage earners. Because today, if you look at individual taxes, people who get salaries pay more tax than people who are in business. There are 2.3 crore people who file returns with the heading income from professional business, right? They pay lesser tax than about 2.5-3 crore people who pay salaries. Because salary, you get stuck, everything is tedious. Everybody wants to escape. But those people do business, well, they get a lot of tax break, they have a lot of personal expenditure, the write-off, they don't pay the share. So at least give something to the middle class, create that animal spirit. Now, middle class savings will go up. You're not going to lose revenue because the business part of the taxpayers will increase their income. When I was a chartered accountant many years back, I used to go to some people and people used to come to our office, a small office, where I did my articles. They used to say, sir, ye saal 50,000 tax bharna hai. Kitna income dikana hai? Then we'll tell him 50,000 ke liye itna income hai. Then they go back and get their books with perfectly the same amount. That's how Indian business largely works, smaller businesses. So if you increase reduce the tax rate up to 15 lakhs, everybody will show income of 15-20 lakhs and they'll create more capital in the book. They'll be more honest. This is the behavior of the Indian. You can't stop it. Why is that? Because taxation has been extortion in this country. Right from the Mughal period, it's been extortion. And after independence, we are 97% because of bad policies by Nehru, right? And the memory is still there. Tax terrorism is a reality. Even though Jaitley promised us they'll reduce tax terrorism, between 2014 to 2019, the disputes and the money locked up went up from 4.5 lakh crores to 9.5 lakh crores. Only now, with the scheme, they're trying to reduce it, which is very good news. But I think they must do more. So they must give incentives to savings. And lastly, RBI should keep the interest rates down. Because, see, Anurag, interest rate depends upon the CPI. And you'll be very shocked to know the consumer price index has 47% weight for food. Right? It was done in 2011-12. Today, latest data says that that has come down to 30% in whatever everybody buys. Not you and me, but ordinary people buy. Right? But the weight is high. So when onion prices go up, tomato prices go up, potato prices go up, food inflation goes up. So interest rates in India depend on CPI based upon onion prices and potato prices and tomato prices. No country has such a large weight of any consequence. So this is crazy. RBI has to look at onion prices to increase interest rates. So we must create a new index too, a CPI index based upon the weights of people's income in 2000, maybe 2021 and 2019-20, so that the weights will come down. In fact, the workers, the national workers scheme CPI has already come down to 30%, which has been introduced by the government. So CPI should come down. So RBI should make sure that interest rates are kept down by having greater liquidity at the short end of the yield curve, so that more money is available. If you squeeze liquidity, it's going to hurt because India is short of capital. The biggest thing for India is short of capital. And also we must incentivize our investors. For example, India has the 3rd largest quantum of startups in the world, 50,000 startups, 43 unicorns, creating $170 billion of value, 3,500 companies this year. And we have got $70 billion of capital from 2014 till 2020 calendar year. And by 2025, will be 100 unicorns and 100,000 startups will get $100 billion coming there. Okay, this is the target. Now, there's a tax discrimination against the Indian investors and overseas investors. Indian investors and unlisted stock have to pay 20% tax plus 38% surcharge above 5 crores. Whereas the foreign investor has to pay 10% tax even for listed and unlisted, and there is no surcharge on them. Why are you hurting the poor Indian? Just because we are born in this country, we want to live here, don't want to run away like other people, take money and run away, you are discriminating. That has to be removed. So you must incentivize Indian investors by creating a tax structure equal to what foreign investors have, so that we don't become a digital colony. We could become a digital colony. So Anurag, these are, I think, the expectation for the budget. Fiscal deficit, the government borrows the same as last year. In a bad year, it could come down from 7.5% to maybe 5.5%, 6%. So don't squeeze that. Bring down the fiscal deficit to 3.5% in the next 3 to 4 years, because we need that. But that money clearly has to go for investment and not for any goodies to people. There are enough goodies that Prime Minister Modi is giving. Just carry forward the schemes, and I think things will do well.
Okay, Mr. Pai, that's very comprehensive view of what should be done, but you're right that entrepreneurs, to employ more people, more jobs must be created, because that will create demand. You talked about both investment and demand right up front. You alluded to startups and profitable unicorns. Now, EduTech over the last 12 months or so has been the flavor of the season. SaaS startups are the flavor of the season. When it comes to startup investing, give us a sense of what you expect to happen in 2021.
Anurag, that's a very good question. In fact, I was in that Prarambh meet of the DPIIT, and I had a panel discussion. I gave my thoughts on that. Look, this year, this decade will be the decade of India, like we said, and I'm sure you're going to write about it more, and we'll make it happen, Anurag. We'll meet again 2031, Anurag. Both of us are still going to be around, hopefully, and we'll talk about what we did in 10 years, all right? We must remember the day. So, Anurag, there are 3 big issues that have to be done to accelerate startups. First, we need more capital. China invests $65 billion into startups and venture every year, 60% from China. United States, $135 billion. India, only $11-12 billion. How can we compete with $11-12 billion? And after $11-12 billion, 90% comes from overseas. Why Indians are not investing? Because of the perverse tax laws. You can go to the stock market, invest, pay 11% tax after 1 year, and you got a choice of lot of stocks, highly liquid, all information. Vis-a-vis, you have to go to startups, invest there, wait for 7 to 10 years. We may make more money, but the risk is much, much higher. So India's tax laws are perverse, where for taking greater risk, you pay more tax. It's ridiculous, right? You take more risk, the tax should be lower. You take greater risk, you pay more tax. That's very ridiculous. That's very wrong. That must come. So the first thing to do is reduce the long-term capital gains to 10% or abolish it for 10 years on unlisted stock and abolish the surcharge. That means more Indian money will go there, and that incentive should be there so that more Indian money, we don't end up as a digital colony. We'll build the second or third largest startup system in the world. If all of them are owned by foreign capital largely, what is the point, right? Because today, out of the 43 unicorns, 20 plus are domiciled outside. Incubators like Y Combinator tell Indian startups, come and register in Singapore or Delaware, then we'll give you money. We don't give you money in India. So foreigners don't want to invest in India. Second, create the structures for more foreign capital to come in. I'm not against foreign capital. We need capital from all around the world, but don't discriminate against the poor Indian. I mean, we are citizens of this country. We live in this country. We're not going to run away from this country like people who run away to England, right? We're going to stay here, and we want to build our country. So don't go on hitting us in the back every single time. So for the foreigners, the biggest challenge is the ease of getting money in and out. Now in the stock market, a foreign investor called FPI can come in, tie up with the depository. The deposit will do the KYC, open the account, create the bank account, they put the money there. Then they ask him to buy, tell their broker to buy it, then the depository pays money, then they sell, the money goes back to the account, they can take it out. But for investment to startups, you first come in and say you want to invest in the company. Then you got to do KYC, you got to have a PAN number, you got to do it on your own. Then after that, you have to get a valuation certificate, because RBI will come and tell you, why did you invest in this? And RBI is really, really doing a bad job in this area, not in other areas, they're doing a good job. And then you got to have documents. That takes a lot of time for the money to come. Then after 2 or 3 years, 5 years, you want to sell, then you need a valuation certificate. You got to go to the bank. The bank has to say, yes, you brought in the foreign exchange. The valuation is all right, blah, blah, blah. And then when you can go, it takes a lot of time. People don't want the hassle. That's why they tell you want our money, register in Singapore, register outside, make India startup a subsidiary, will invest. That's why they've gone out. And I think that's very bad. So create a depository-like structure for foreign capital to come in, right? And that will be very good. And if you do that, there'll be much more money coming into Indian registered company, which is very important. Second important thing has to be done. The bigger point is we have to ease regulations by SEBI and RBI. Now SEBI has done a wonderful job in COVID, and I know they have put out papers in the public domain where they have eased out the regulation for listing of startups. They're creating a new market called the Innovation Growth Platform, IGP, where you can have much easier norms. And they also put out the papers where they're going to reduce the lock-in and everything else. I think they're doing a great job. And when that comes into force, hopefully in the next 2 months, our processes and regulation for raising capital equal to NASDAQ are better. It will be much better for them to raise money. And I think that's very, very good. But that problem of exits is taken care of. Because for startups, exits are required. If exits happen, money gets recycled, people make more money, that attracts everybody else. In the US, why are people putting so much money into venture? Where there's so many IPOs, stock has gone up so much, people have made so much of money, they want more. Let's admit it, Anurag, only greed and fear work in capitalistic societies. There has to be greed, there has to be fear. Both have to work together. If greed is more than fear, there's a boom. If fear is there, it's teji and mandi, right? The fear is more than greed, mandi hota hai. So I think it's very important that SEBI does that, and that is happening. But RBI is a big problem. Because RBI regulations are based upon FEMA, but the mentality of RBI and foreign exchange, that of FERA. FERA was draconian. FEMA came 20 years ago. We have seen changes, but not enough. For example, if you write to RBI for any approval, anything, they don't even reply to you. Yesterday, I was speaking to a very, very big investor, largest investor in India, and he was telling me they applied for something in Bangalore, which has to go to Bombay. It never went to Bombay. When they called up Bombay for 1.5 months, they said, we're not received it. They don't even communicate. And one of our startups wrote to RBI for getting permission. For 1 year, there's no reply. Then the re-domicile went off the US and raised capital. So RBI should first put a process that they will reply, they will give a decision within 30 days. That's very important because this is part of customer service. This is not part of regulations. The monetary policy is your prerogative. Nobody can question you, right? But this is service, client service. You can't do a bad job of client service, make them wait. We are not hostages. Like Manish Sabharwal says, we are not hostages. We are citizens. We have a right. We're just implementing the law. Please implement it and reply. Second, they got very bad lists, very bad rules like round tripping. Anurag will be very surprised. If you buy a US company with an Indian subsidiary, you have to get RBI approval. Otherwise, you don't need RBI approval if there's no Indian subsidiary because they say it's round tripping. You're investing overseas to buy and the money is coming back to India, which is absurd because you're buying something which already exists. You're not doing that. That has to change. And then today, if an Indian startup where you invested goes re-domiciles and you want to invest, you can't invest beyond $250,000 on the LRS. Why should you do that? If you write to RBI for approval, they'll not give you approval. One of my very close friends, Chris Gopalkrishnan, I can give the name, want to invest in one of India's best biotech companies called Bugworks. They domicile outside. They have an R&D center here, primarily because they could not get capital in India. He wanted to invest large amounts of money, wrote to RBI. RBI, after about 8 to 9 months, said no. And when they say no, they don't give reason, they don't talk to you. You can see many letters, very, very cryptic. So I think they must change the round tripping. And the third thing is, they must put in the enabling process for us to make sure that you can invest more money outside. Now, if you've got capital in this country and you want to invest in a company which has great relationship with India, or you want to invest in NASDAQ, why should it be restricted to $250,000? Why can't do $1 million a year? We have no shortage of foreign capital. We got $586 billion of reserves. All the money is now with RBI is investing in US government bond getting peanuts, 0.75% interest, 1% interest. Why can't they allow us to invest and earn more money and with the condition get the money back to India after you sell? That's fine. At least get the money back to India. That's fine. It's our money, right? Why? Now, capital account convertibility has to be liberalized. I think it's very important. Also, we must liberalize it so that we get more Indians who have gone abroad to come to India and grow those companies without the fear that tomorrow if they come to India, stay for a number of years, make a lot of money, they can't take the money out. Now, you know very well, if you're a resident Indian and you've got children outside, you can't sell your property and take out more than $1 million a year. Why didn't you make it 5 million, 10 million? Or if you're a non-resident, you come to India and you invest here and you become a resident here under FEMA, then why don't you allow them to repatriate whatever they've earned out of that money? So we got to change regulation. So we need a new Foreign Exchange Management Act with greatly liberalized, reduced powers for the RBI, and also this old regulation, all kind of things should go. That's regulation. The third important thing, Anurag, for startups is, if you look at the entire innovation curve, the bottom of the pyramid in technology, we are very strong, we dominate. Software services, 60% of the world comes to us. In the middle two, we dominate. Maybe 30-35% of the world's work we do. At the top, we are very poor. Why is that? We don't have enough R&D. We're not creating enough computer science PhDs. We're not creating enough data scientists. We're not creating enough biotechnology PhDs. We're not creating enough people in 3D printing, etc. So why don't you pick up the top 100 engineering schools, public and private, give each of them 5 crores or 50 crores, over the period of 5 years to do PhD programs, to do master's programs, to do research, and create a national research grid in high technology. Because once you create that and you create the intellectual capital, you'll write those algorithms for AI. Now, I was in a Niti Aayog meeting sometime back, 2 years back, where I told them that we need a program for artificial intelligence to grow in this country. They came out with a $1.5 billion program. China is spending $150 billion by 2022. Okay, India is trying to do something, that's good news. And the discussion there was, we got to train people in creating AI. I told them, don't train people. We got Infosys, Wipro, they'll train people how to use AI. Now they trained 10 lakh people in the last 3 years how to use AI. Use of AI is different from creating AI. Creating AI means you write the algorithms. You have to do a lot of research. You got to research on neural networks, etc. Right? You got to do human brain interface research. All that has to be done. That can be done in universities, in the research labs. And companies cannot do too much of it, right? Because it costs a lot of money. And once you get those PhDs, then you can hire them and ask them to do the research. But creating that kind of initial thing, there has to be public money. So these are the 3 things that are required to make India a truly world-class superpower. We need more capital, we need better regulations, and we need more R&D spending public money at the top of the pyramid.
Thank you so much. So, hopefully some of those things will happen over the next 2 to 5 years. And
I wish you'd write about it in business world, because I think, you are an opinion maker. If you write about all this, what we have discussed there, I think it'll be very good news, because India needs to change. Anurag, the old ways of doing things is no longer kosher. We are in this decade, 2030. We have to invest in the first 5 years, so the next 5 years will be great years for India. And this is our time. China will grow 3 to 4%. Europe will not grow. The US will grow 1 to 2%. The biggest growth can come from India. People want to diversify their purchases and manufacturing away from China. Now they've gone to Vietnam because the Chinese have gone to Vietnam. Okay, not the Vietnamese, the Chinese, because they share 1,200 kilometers border. India people don't understand that, they go on crying about it. But the Chinese shifted to Vietnam because Vietnam doesn't have the tariff. They just went across the border and set up shop. All right, that's one thing. Vietnam may become a Chinese colony. We don't know. Like Pakistan is becoming a Chinese colony. So, we have to do that. And people want to come to India. We need contract manufacturers. The biggest producers in the world do contract manufacturing in China. They don't set up shop. They go to somebody who manufactures, put their chapa, and then they buy and export. So we got to create that in this country. So this decade is ours. And for all that, we need good policy in the first year.
Like what we did in pharma.
Yeah, we need that money. Like pharma. See, pharma, API is not made in India. 90% imported from China. Now they're coming out with the PLI. The PLI scheme is fantastic. Prime Minister Modi gave us the Make in India. Nothing much happened because there's only the idea, but nothing behind it. Now they created a PLI scheme. India is the second largest manufacturer of, mobile phones. Second largest exporter. Even though it's small, we'll be the second largest exporter soon. And we need the PLI scheme in manufacturing, which has already happened. They're announcing a PLI scheme for laptops and others, where one of the major buyers. We need to do all that for automobiles, etc. Like that, we need a PLI, Atmanirbhar scheme for startups for this country to take care of high tech and innovation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pai, for talking to BW Business World. I'm sure our viewers and readers will benefit from what you've said. And we look forward to talking to you around the budget time to see what happens and what is the road ahead. Just before we let you go, I'd like to ask you, what are your top lessons from lockdown as an individual, as an entrepreneur, as somebody who enables the entrepreneurial ecosystem? What are your top lockdown lessons?
Well, let me start with some personal lessons. Then I'll start with what startups did and others did. Personal lessons, first focus on your health. Lockdown was a wake-up call. In 2019, I did 185 flights. 2020 till March 11th, 135 flights. I had 11 more flights before March 31. I have not flown a single flight. I feel much better. I go to my home gym 5 times a week, morning and evening. I lost 10 kgs. I'm much more healthy. My diet is different. I sleep better, everything. Stress levels are down. Take care of yourself. Because you got only one life and you got to live it healthily. And try to be safe when there's COVID. Don't be adventurous, because why take chances, right? Because you can take a chance, but you cause pain to others. You cause pain to your family. You cause pain to your friends. You cause, stress in the medical system. You can afford to pay and go to the doctors, but you're causing stress. So I think first thing is take care of yourself, lead a better, healthy life, cut down unnecessary things that you do. With all of us think travel is work, travel is not work. Well, it's bad for the airlines and the hotels, but whatever it is, your health is more important. And everybody is now doing technology. That's point number one. Second, build up your relationship with your family. Spend more time with your family. They're all that you got, your family and your friends, right? I think we've spoken more together, Anurag, than we ever did before COVID, right? Our worlds are very different. Now we can talk to each other, spend more time with family, spend more time with friends, because human relationship and human networks are extremely important. They're all that you got. All right, there's nobody else for you. You'll all be history doing a live later. So just do that. Third thing is, in business, make sure that you are in survival mode. You keep cash in the balance sheet. I was very apprehensive that 25% of startups will die. Maybe 3 or 4, 5% died. Why is that? All of them responded magnificently. They cut costs, they cut their salaries, they extended their money, they went into survival mode, and they reconfigured their business. They went fully digital, and many of them are doing extremely well. Many of them have seen the revenues go up 2x, 3x, 4x in the COVID times. So the key thing for all industry is keep cash on the balance sheet. Don't get over leverage, right? If things go wrong, you need the money to reconfigure. Have credit lines, reduce your costs, become competitive, okay? And assume that, you've got to be paranoid. Only the paranoid survive and grow. That's very true. The people who are paranoid did well. All the big IT companies had enough cash in the balance sheet for 1 year expenditure. They didn't blink. Right? And many people suffered. Then they laid off people, all kind of problems. You create too much of pain for everybody who don't have money. Do that. And third, grow a digital interface. The world has gone digital. People's habits have changed. There's no going back. Everything is gone digital. Education, like you said, the edtechs. You are seeing the health techs. You've seen the SaaS companies. So all business and traditional business, media too, is all gone. We are all on Zoom. We're seeing much more people reading, maybe seeing Zoom than reading physically. Even physically, they do it on their iPad or the laptops, right? It's all gone digital. Go digital, right? Next point is take the globe as a market. Don't focus only on India. India is a small economy, only $3 trillion. The globe is 82 trillion. Focus on the big market. Build up contacts. Take the whole world as a stage. That's what IT service companies did well. People focus on India only didn't do well. They're all focused on around the world. And they did very well because the globe is a big market. You can compete. That's what China has done. Create an export business, create everything else. And lastly, always be optimistic. The sun is going to rise in the morning tomorrow, set in the evening. Whether you are there or you are not there is going to happen. Your ability to, influence many things is limited, right? And be optimistic, push the boundaries, think about problem solving, and you'll do well. Don't get into pessimism. Don't listen to Lutyens Delhi who talk about negative things about this country. This country has a great future. We got great people. Everybody should be optimistic. You're optimistic, you can do great things. And I think it's very important to get away from negative narratives, all these things that are created in JNU and other places in Delhi, right? But Delhi is not India. Remember that. Those few people are doing it for political reasons, but be optimistic and face the future with confidence. And if you do that, you will succeed and be happy.
Thank you, Mr. Pai, for being so optimistic. And yes, India hopefully will see 2030 as India's decade in the world and achieve more in the next 5 and 10 years than it ever did. I'm sure I agree with you that it will happen. There is a large probability of it happening. And the last 10 months have shown that Indian entrepreneurs have the resilience and the agility and this, frugal mindset, if I may use it, to create value. I think one shift that has happened in entrepreneurs is a lot of entrepreneurs would want to be rich, but I think I see a shift where they want to be wealthy, which means they're more long-term. They're investing back into their companies and they want to make a global impact. So thank you for talking to BW Business World. We'll talk to you soon enough again, and I'm sure the budget will be something that will be a booster for the economy and lay the groundwork for what needs to be done in this decade. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you. And all the
been
best.
A pleasure.
Thank you. All the best to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So we'll edit it and we'll also take this in the magazine. So I'll send you a link to this.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.